It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Jeff Goodman. Tonight, Leonard Jacobs joins us for reviews of Bye Bye Birdie, Rock of Ages, and Brighton Beach Memoirs. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. Okay, I am Charles Gross, and this is Two on the Aisle. My guest tonight, Leonard Jacobs. Len is the author of the Clyde Finch Report.
Clyde Fitch Report.
Clyde Fitch Report, excuse me. What is the Clyde Fitch Report?
The Clyde Fitch Report is the nexus of arts and politics. It's at clydefitch.com, and Clyde Fitch, because I know you're dying to know, was America's most prolific, acclaimed, controversial, and commercially successful playwright and director in the years immediately before Eugene O'Neill.
And you're also a commentator, I think, on the Fox News webcast?
Yeah, brand me, brand me. I go on a show called The Strategy Room, which is a live streaming news program. If you go to, I'll do the plug, even though I'm not being paid by them to do this plug, but if you go to...
But did they pay to make the appearances, at least?
No, because you're considered a source, and as a news organization, you don't pay for sources. But if you go to foxnews.com/strategy room, it's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Each hour is a new news segment. And they have some Democrats. I mean, I know it's, in vogue to say that it's not fair or balanced. They have an interesting habit of suggesting that my appearance alone makes them fair and balanced. I go in and I fight for the left when I think the left needs to be fought for, which will bring us inevitably to Bye Bye Birdie.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how we equate Fox News with Bye Bye Birdie. I will say that this is, interestingly, the first revival ever on Broadway of Bye Bye Birdie, one of the few Broadway shows that until this revival had actually more movie versions of it made
than productions on
Broadway. And I'm really, honestly, I am glad it's back. I have to say, welcome to the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, where, according to Bye Bye Birdie, life was serene and everything was wonderful, unless you happen to be working at a certain ad agency in New York City. Not related to Bye Bye Birdie, but that seems to be the prevailing impression of the 60s. Now, this is based, essentially, on Elvis Presley's being drafted. The premise of the story is Conrad Birdie, a rock star who, not in this production, but originally was modeled after Presley, is going into the Army, which is a major setback for his handlers, namely Albert Peterson and his long-suffering secretary, Rosie. Basically, Albert is in show business. His entire career revolves around Birdie. Now, Rosie had been engaged for 8 years. And Rosie would like him to get out of show business, become an English teacher, and marry her. Two things standing in the way. Number one was Conrad Birdie, who's been off to the Army. The other, Albert's mother, who can't stand Rosie. Or probably could not stand any girl that his son would want to settle down with. She doesn't mind fixing it up occasionally, but not with someone that she thinks he'd be serious. The score is by Lee Adams and Charles Strauss. It's got everything from rock songs like One Last Kiss to Put on a Happy Face. Really solid score. Forgot almost the most important part. In order to get one more hit out of Conrad, they basically write one last song, and they come up with a promotional gimmick for him to kiss this one fan goodbye, representing all the girls. So they go to this small town, small town USA.
Ohio.
Yes. Doesn't get any more American than that, and essentially turn the whole town upside down. Did I leave anything out?
No, except for the showboat that went up the Mississippi. It's a different show.
Sorry,
I mess that up
well,
all the time.
Not a showboat, but Ed Sullivan.
Yes.
Now, this is where it gets interesting, because when this show first opened I think it was 1960 or thereabouts.
1960.
Ed Sullivan was one of the biggest names in television. And now, I certainly know who he is. I'm sure you do. But I wonder if a lot of people going to the play know of who he is, or do they just go home and try and YouTube him?
Well, you can YouTube Ed Sullivan, actually, and I have actually done that. I mean, I know who Ed Sullivan was. He is slightly before my time, but that doesn't mean that, just because you're born after a particular period of time doesn't mean you can't have a cultural reference.
Absolutely.
You could feel, at least at the performance I attended, the generational divide. People below a certain age didn't get that, and there were we were talking about this earlier. There were some other cultural references in the lyrics, in particular, and below a certain age, I'm going to pick a number. I'm going to say below 30. There was sort of this catatonic, I don't get it look on certain people's faces. The older people were, I hate to say this, I feel like it's ageist, but the older that people were, the more references they tended to get, the more they bought into the jokes, and it was strange to be so conscious of that.
You know what? I'm going to just stop us for a minute.
Okay.
We have some scenes from the show.
Awesome.
So let's take a look at the revival of Bye Bye Birdie.
Hi, Ursula. Hi, Helen. What's the story? Morning glory. What's the tale? Nightingale. Told me quick about Hugo and Kim. Did they really get pinned? Did she kiss him and cry? Did he pin the pin on? Or was he too shy? Well, I heard they got pinned. I was hoping they would. Now they're living at last.
He's
Going steady for good.
Gray skies are gonna clear up. Put on a happy face. Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face. Take off the gloomy mask of tragedy. It's not your style. You look so good that you'll be glad you decided to smile.
A la vida tosta, chichi, costa, mango. It's all day long, my castanets will click. I'll hide behind my fan and do the tango. I'll be so Spanish it'll make you sick.
Harry McAfee, appearing with Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan.
Crazy clothes and motorboat races. Someone nice to kinda love to. Broadway lights and wide open spaces. There's such a lot of living to do.
Bye bye birdie, I'm gonna miss you so. Bye bye birdie, why'd you have to go?
Okay. We're back. I have to say, I really enjoyed this show immensely.
Okay.
I've always liked Bye Bye Birdie. I've wanted to see it on stage. I like John Stamos channeling Dick Van Dyke occasionally. As Albert Peterson, let's see, I liked Gina Gershon occasionally channeling Cheetah Rivera. Again, both good chemistry, good dancing, good singing. I like Bill Irwin, who was, well, channeling Bill Irwin often enough. I think I'm glad to finally see him in a role where he gets to kind of integrate his vaudevillian character.
Okay.
On it. You didn't like
No,
Bill
I
Irwin?
didn't. I am afraid I did not. I'm letting you sort of bask in the
Okay.
happiness. I don't want to
Okay,
spoil
well,
all
you
of
can,
that.
You can go ahead. You can go.
Well, I have to side
Did
with.
you like Allie Trimm as Kim? The teenager who's
she made
kissing
no,
Connie.
no, yeah. I mean, she made no impression upon me whatsoever. I thought that I'm sort of diametrically opposite. I thought it had chemistry problems.
Really?
I also thought that John Stamos did indeed, for me, have pitch problems, although they weren't as terrible as I had heard they were when the first night reviews came out. I mean, there were any number of comments about his pitch issues, and I thought that they weren't too bad. And quite frankly, Albert Peterson, it's not opera. I mean, it's not that hard to hit those notes, and he was more or less hitting them. And if he doesn't have to sustain notes for any great length of time, he was actually fine. What it felt more like to me is that that Bobby Longbottom, the director and choreographer, had sort of staged him with such precision that the guy couldn't sort of break out and bring his own sort of panache to the role. I sometimes feel like you could watch him sort of hit his marks, hit his place and do what he's supposed to do. I felt similarly with Gina Gershon, and that just bugged the daylights out of me because, number one, just physically, she's such a knockout.
Yes.
And
she can dance.
And she can dance, and she looks great and whatever. But I feel like I think one of the problems that this Birdie has is that they're operating in the shadow of performances that those people have never seen, right? And
Most people haven't seen them.
right.
It's
I mean,
almost 50
maybe,
years.
Right. I mean, maybe Bill Irwin, when he was, what, 7, saw Bye Bye Birdie.
Or
But
they may have seen Dick Van Dyke do the movie.
Or they might have, but it's not the same thing. I mean, it's that's cut and shot and everything else. My issue with look, I am second to none in my love for Bill Irwin, and I was thrilled to see him in a musical because you usually don't. And I think he's one of our 2 or 3 great clowns. I don't understand what he was doing with the role. I'm going to make a comment. I think another critic wrote that he seemed like he was a stroke victim. And I know that's a little harsh.
Very much so.
Don't shoot the messenger. It's something that I read, but I thought that it was kind of apt. He did this. It was like a funny voice, and it was clownish, but it wasn't sharpened or focused, from what I could tell. And here's the thing. People may have laughed at the performance that you were at, and every performance is different, and that's by definition what theater is. There were moments during, what is it, a hymn to Sunday Evening? That's the name of the song?
Something like that. Basically a tribute to Ed Sullivan.
Hymn for a Sunday Evening, right.
Yes.
And now I did Bye Bye Birdie in high school, and I played
Didn't
Mr.
we all?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're not allowed to graduate high school in New York without having done Bye Bye Birdie. And, on the plus side, I so enjoyed hearing lines from the book that I remembered from 20 years ago when I did the show.
Great.
But that number is supposed to really bring the house down. And what it got,
The kids' number?
yeah, well, kids, but also him for a Sunday evening, both.
Michael Stewart did the book, by the way.
Yes. Yes, Michael Stewart did the book, and we should credit him for that because it's got some terrific lines in it.
Yes, it does.
And those held up, I thought, rather nicely. But the Bill Irwin numbers didn't really bring down the house the way I think they could have, and I think it's possibly because the audience did not fully understand who the guy was. And I mean, it's not Peer Gynt. So I don't really understand what he was doing.
I will concede that he did not have the sharpness that, say, Paul Lynde put into the role, who Paul Lynde created the role, also did the movie version. But he did it his own way, and I can certainly, as a father of a teenage daughter and a teenager, I could certainly understand where the guy was coming from.
Right.
And you could argue, was his shtick appropriate for the play? Maybe, maybe not, but since it was Bill Irwin doing it, it's like when Jerry Lewis started doing shtick.
Sure.
But it worked because he did enough to remind you it was Jerry Lewis, but not so much that it overwhelmed the role. And I think Bill Irwin is the same. He puts a very different spin. He is a flustered father rather than
I would agree with you
than a sharp and deflated one.
Yeah.
On that, so he takes a very different approach to the role. You may not have liked it. I certainly did. My one complaint really about the play is.
The young man playing Conrad Birdie.
The young man playing
Knew you were gonna say
Conrad
that.
Birdie, yeah. And because, to me, call me a traditionalist, but I like I want to see Elvis.
Yeah, okay.
Why do we feel, I think the director here wanted to get away from everything. He restaged even the phone number, very nicely, I might add.
I agree with you there.
On
That's
that.
the landmark number of the show, the telephone hour.
Yes, but
Telephone, whatever it's
to
called.
have the nerve, and that's Robert Longbottom, to have the nerve to do that. You have to give him credit for going in that direction. But he looked like a Backstreet Boy. I will say, rather, he didn't come across as this, sexy singer to me.
Yeah.
Now my daughter was there, and she's obviously the type who would have been screaming.
Right.
There's the audience that Rosie and Albert are going after.
Yeah.
She thought he was good. She enjoyed him. All in all, I had heard things along the lines that you had said about the production. I went in, I sat down. I had a wonderful time, and on a scale from 1 to 5, and I am surprising myself here, I'm giving it a full 5.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, can I include the interior of the Henry Miller Theater in my numerical evaluation?
This is a brand new renovated theater that the Roundabout. Roundabout's going to be bigger than the Schubert Organization if they get any more
Roundabout
theaters.
would like to be bigger than the Schubert Organization.
Your final thoughts about Bye Bye Birdie?
They could have put it in the 20s and called them flappers. Sorry, is that bad? Wow, I'll never be invited back.
I don't quite get the reference. I
Birdie,
understand.
flapper.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Anyway, if I had to give it, I'd probably give it a 2.
Thinking thoroughly modern Millie here, I think.
Okay. Thoroughly modern Birdie.
Oh,
maybe.
Well, I don't think they modernized it at all. They were they
No,
were
it's
going.
definitely period.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think for Birdie, that's probably just as well.